So we're going to start my backstory videos. I'm going to try to break this up into two, because I feel like I lived two different lives. Well, I think I'm 37 now. Born in 1984. Love the Transformers, by God. Okay. I am a scientist now. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Born in 1984. And I grew up on the Missouri-Arkansas border in Missouri. There wasn't a Walmart's within 30 minutes of me. But, like, I didn't have a friend that lived next to me, that lived within a mile of my house, till I was in junior high. Literally, I had a 45-minute bus ride to grade school every day. So yeah, I didn't grow up with the peer pressure that everybody else did. And since my brother was 5 years older than me and a little bit slower, it really didn't have as much in common. I may have been labeled with a learning disability, but you can see that my math skills were fantastic. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a degree in physics. Now, I have a problem with spelling and grammar. For some reason, my brain just doesn't work that way. It's led me to understand that this has happened to other people to get labeled like this. To actual physicists who got labeled with learning disabilities in grade school. If it's easy to remember, or if it's easy to learn, it's easy to forget. That's a healthy brain. It throws out stuff that isn't relevant to them. So the harder the problem, the easier it was for us to remember. That's why I always got the upper level concepts better than the lower level stuff, because it was just easy to forget. So, that's the way I grew up. I grew up out in sticks. They didn't even have my house that I grew up in on Google till about 2 years ago. Like, that's how far out I was. And that, because our peer people do affect the way we learn. And since my dad took me around to actual museums and stuff to get hands-on experience, he didn't really have a lot of experience in my actual schooling, but yet my education was that broad. But because of my brother and stuff, I was almost like an only child. So an only child actually develops a great imagination usually because of being an only child. And because my brother was a little slower and I couldn't understand what was really going on, I developed a very anger issues. Now, I had to learn to control my anger, and when you do that, it rewrites your brain to have more empathy. So my brother's on one side of the spectrum, I'm on the other. I literally can put myself in anybody's shoes. There's nobody I can't understand. It's just the way the world works for me. I don't even always get a choice. I don't want to understand the person that was mouthing off about my dead dragon the day my dragon died, but I do. I understand this person. It's not hard for me. It's super easy because I have that great imagination and I have that empathy. And I didn't grow up with too many pets. We had goldfish, we had wild cats that literally, like house cats that were wild. And every time they would have babies, they would be wild, and then we'd tame them down. I can't tell you how many times I got bit on the finger by them. So, my friends grew up in the 80s in the South. And they went to my school over 10 years to coach the team that I went to high school. Now, the South ain't known for great schooling. And they grew up traveling all over it. And they made fun of my high school for how bad it was after it had been remodeled. That's how bad my school was. Like, literally, and I had a class of like 300 people, the most that it ever had. Maybe there's been other ones like that because it's a whole county, not just a city or something. Because it was the sticks. And so, there's not enough student-to-teacher ratio. So I did not get a proper education in my life. So I went on to work for Walmart, Sonic, Mink's Lumberyard, Home Depot, Lowe's, everything under the sun. I met some friends. Because of my actual background, my actual imagination, and the way my brain works, my empathy, I understand human behavior really, really well. And I learned to play poker. And then I learned to card count. And I actually got so good at reading people that I can actually read people at a poker table. And I got to working at Lazy Boy, and I hated it. And I had a house, and like it just wasn't a great situation for somebody like me, who's not secure in their world yet. I'm not an insecure person. I was just insecure in my world. I didn't have a secure place yet. Everybody always asks, they think I'm a compulsive gambler. I haven't gambled in years. I already learned the stuff, so now I don't care. It's just, I move on. I got bored. It's one of my biggest flaws is that I get bored very easily. And I worry about this hobby now with the reptiles. I'm going to get bored. So I have to find another way to deal with this. And the positive things that we can do, like Animal in the House usually comes out with and says straight out, instead we want to hoard a bunch of animals instead of trying to collect as many reptiles as you can, giving better care to the reptiles that we have and being able to learn things like that. Honestly, I've seen behaviors out of my dragons that I can't find writings on, headbutting and things, and they don't live together. So yeah, it's one of those things that we're going to talk about later about their behaviors and stuff. And so I wanted to go back to school. And I was thinking of being, at this point in time, I've never read a book cover to cover, besides comic books. And so I went to Kansas City. 3-hour ride on my motorcycle. Well, I didn't have the money that day to get into a satellite tournament to try to get into the World Series of Poker, so I wouldn't have to work while I went to school. That was my goal, not to work while I went to school. So I had to go to Kansas, over towards Kansas City. And so I found a hotel room over there that I could afford, and it was closest to where I could actually get the money out the next morning to actually go play in a satellite tournament and try to get in. So for $500, try to get into a $10,000 game. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna try to do that. So I ended up taking my motorcycle and trying to go to the casino because I had like $30. So let's see if I can make money at the craps table. If not, I can come back. I had fun, blah, blah, blah. Well, I got lost. I got stuck in traffic 5 hours on the side of the road because my motorcycle overheated. Because I had to call my dad to get a tow truck to me. So he did. And so literally it even started raining. And like I said, I got lost. I don't know where the casino's at. And I got under an overpass. And so when we got my bike, we went under that overpass, onto the turnoff, and right there was the casino I was headed to. It's like, oh God. So my dad had to come pick me up the next day. I got back to the hotel. And at my house, it was right around the time that they switched from analog to digital in TV. And I don't have cable or internet or anything at the house. So I have no TV. I don't watch anything. I watch a bunch of movies and stuff. Fine. On DVDs and stuff. So I got to watching Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman about black holes. And I loved it. And the way they set up shows, they try to help you get the answer so you feel better about watching it, so it makes you feel comfortable and excited because you figured it out. And that's what they did to me. I was able to figure out what they were talking about before the end of the commercial. And so when I got home, I picked up the book I was maybe about 23, and I picked up the book that they had recommended. No, I would have been 25. Yeah, I would have been 25. Getting close to 26. And so I picked up the book they recommended. He goes, The Black Hole Wars by Leonard Susskind. My battle with Stephen Hawking to make the universe safe for quantum mechanics. 400 and something pages. I actually read it cover to cover. First book I ever read. Took me almost a month to do. And so I'm a slow reader, but I pick up on a lot more. And I understood about 90% of it. I pick up on a lot more than most people do because they just read through it real fast. And it's like you enjoyed it, but you didn't really pick it up. I'm a slow reader, but I pick up more. So there's a trade-off in the way we read. It's fine. So right then, I'm like, I'm going to switch to physics. And that's what I did. So now we're going to go to part 2. This just part 1. That's the beginning to me. That right there was what changed my life.